Hagerman. Mr. Perry and your Wisconsin. Mr. Perry, you may proceed with your opening statement. Yes, sir.
Good morning. I'm glad that Mr. Hagerman started with the question, what does it take? What does it take to kill a pillar of this community? What does it take to take a person's life on a dark road? I don't know if anybody here has ever been to Cow's Cutoff, but you can barely get back then 2 cars down that road. So at midnight, during the midnight hour, what would it take to kill a 7-foot basketball star? What would it take to kill a person who had done nothing but bring joy to his family and his friends? They've traveled the world, they've seen great things, they've had experiences that these people lived through this man. What would it take to strike him down if you're his wife? What would it take to try to get him to Memphis if you're his wife at one point? More importantly, at this point, you're not married, but you're the mother of his children. What would it take to do that? Would it take a man who they describe as a yard man, but a man who's got his own business? He doesn't cut just Cheryl Wright's yard. Does it take a man who is her secret love interest that nobody describes as her secret love interest except for the man that y'all are going to have to put this case on in a few days? It's Jimmy Martin. Edna's J. Martin, I think he's called in older cousin Cheryl's phone book. Edna's J. Doesn't even have his own name or identity to go by. But what does it take to do that? What does it take, as Mr. Hagerman said, to lack the courage that it takes to come and stand in front of a man to man, and say, I'm going to take your life, but instead to strike you down while you're waiting, while you're supposed to be out if you're the person's ex-wife, and you got him in the car and say, hey, I'm going to try to call a yard man and see, because he wants to give you some cards on the side of a road. What does it take to do that? What does it take to ask this yard man, who has his own place to live, who has his own car, who has his own motorcycle, who has his own equipment truck, what does it take to ask that person if you can have his car? So that little Jimmy, Edna's J, the trickster, as he goes by in his fledgling rap career, what does it take to get him to give you his car? What does it take to start your investigation at the point of saying, well, I'm going to do an outline from July 17, 2010 into July 23rd, 2010, as opposed to where it's obvious that Jay, little Jimmy, and Cheryl are talking about going to Atlanta days earlier. It takes a punk's heart that's sitting in prison right now for taking a firearm and shooting his wife or his fiance that he lives with to death. It takes that type of a punk to sit up and come up with a story, and as you're talking to the detectives, to say, they told me this. Who told you this? Billy? What did Billy tell you? He told me that he and Cheryl put together a plot to drive his car to a road so that he could pull over on the side of the road, and so that Lorenzen can pull over inside the van with Cheryl, and that Cheryl would take the gun, and that she would act like she was having an argument with Billy, and then Billy could jump out and shoot him. It would take a person who could come up with that as they're talking to an officer 23 days after they're found guilty of murder in this building, 5 months before they're sentenced to some 18-year sentence for killing his girlfriend. That's what it takes. It takes the type of person who changes facts like a person changes drawers. Underwear, excuse me. It takes that type of person. A person who says, you know what? I had the murder car that night. That's what it's going to take. And then it's going to take, after he figures out that some people probably have talked to detectives, to change that. I wasn't in the car that was used. I didn't have Billy's car that night. But y'all got to listen to this. Y'all going to have to listen to this 10 days out of your life. Listen to it and hear it and digest it. It takes a person that not only can take those facts and spin them. I didn't have the murder weapon that night. I didn't find it myself. Or maybe I did. Well, no, I didn't. It takes a person that can weave and go back and forward and back and forward. I don't even know how to cross-examine this man when he comes in here. But I guarantee one thing, the people on this jury have ears. You have the ability to listen and discern. And I don't think it's going to be too hard to quickly understand that the state of Tennessee made a big old mistake. Now, a few minutes ago, Mr. Hagerman pointed out the mistake that Collierville police made. They made a hell of a mistake. They didn't report it. They didn't report this stuff. They didn't call anybody. But guess what the state of Tennessee did? That when this guy says, hey, you know what? I can figure out the murder for you before my sentencing. All right? I can figure out that murder for you. Guess what they do? They give him a permanent get-out-of-jail-free card. Sign this. They sign a contract. Like you go in and buy a car, they sign a contract. No matter what you say, if it changes, if it weaves, if it bobs, there's nothing that we're going to do to you. So this unindicted co-conspirator is a farce. It's a lie. It's nothing. It's something that, as the judge said, a lady from the office reads what we said we think happens, and it goes from there. So you do have calls from Billy, because Billy got his car given to Shara. Shara gives it to Jimmy. Now, I don't think that'll ever be disputed, because even in all the other stuff that he says, he always, I got the car from Shara. Now, you'll hear different facts about what was supposed to have happened on this day. You'll hear facts that there was some meeting, and that when they got to the kitchen during that meeting, there were 3 guns. He changes the type of guns that were supposed to be there. He says that there was the pregnant nanny, who we know is Claudia. You'll see her later today. Says that Shara is there. You'll also hear, I hope, if it's truthful, Claudia say, Shara's always talking about Lorenzen's gonna kill her. That ain't nothing odd. That ain't nothing odd if somebody says, hey, somebody's gonna kill me, and my answer to it is, what am I supposed to do? And it definitely ain't odd for Billy to be there, because once a week, whether or not Shara can pay or she fails to pay, the conversation is always, if you ask them what are the text messages, etc., it's about business with Billy. There ain't no conversation about, I love you. Will you send me a personal picture? Will you send me a picture of your body part? Will you do this, that, or the other? Not from Billy to Shara, but it is from a few other people to Shara. The evidence is going to show, clear as can be, Billy had a well-established life. Billy was living that life in Collierville during that time, in the Memphis area, working, and he was going about life. Also shows he's dealing with church folks. And it was also showed that, I know it's around the perimeters. Let me get it out there. Billy had a history. When Billy was 20, he went to jail. He did his 1.5 years in jail. He got out and he lived his life straight as an arrow. Billy was a man. He dated women. He took care of his responsibilities. And he had fun. But he went to church. He went to church during the week. And as you're going to hear from Claudia, he was so slow, her word, that all I knew about Billy, I thought he was slow. I thought he was slow because he stayed that green and straight and narrow. Now, I was wondering yesterday why you heard all of this scenario about a bank robbery and a this and a that, and Paul, as cool as Paul is, kind of got here about, what about this? What about, you got him, if it's everybody in this circle, they're guilty. Yada, yada, yada. Well, what about if he didn't do nothing? If he's on them, guilty. Judge said, I only instruct you on the law. And you'll get the law at the end of the case. After you measure what comes out of that chair and is told to you, look at the eye contact, look at the body language, look at how the witness tells what they're going to tell. So yeah, you'll see text messages at certain points and it will become clear, and particularly if Jimmy testifies like I think he's going to testify, not necessarily truthfully, but it's the fact that we have his recordings that I know he's going to talk about, you got to get folks' hands dirty some. Now, he doesn't put himself in the person who's getting his hands dirty. He puts himself as the person that want to get information to blackmail sheriff. That's what you're going to hear from him. I'm getting information to blackmail sheriff. So let me be clear. This is what you're going to have to swallow in order to do as Paul, as he whispers, this, to find him guilty. This is what you're going to have to do. You're going to have to listen to what a person who a few days after he was convicted of killing his girlfriend goes in and tells detectives that I can solve this. And then you're going to also have to listen to the fact that as he's telling his story, they buy it hook, line, and sinker, and they write him a contract, and they do all of this stuff before they pull Facebook records between Sheriff and Jimmy. Let me be clear on this, because I don't want it to come out that I'm confusing anybody or anything. Before you get concentrated Facebook messages between Sheriff and Jimmy, and you see those messages, and you can take a third grader and figure what they're talking about, and guess whose name ain't no damn where near it? Billy. Billy's got his own life that he's living. Billy would loan his car to any of y'all if somebody that he knew vouched for you. They don't know nothing about little Jimmy other than Jimmy comes to the house one day while he's over there and Sheriff's talking about Jimmy needs a car. He doesn't have a car, but he has these DJ gigs. And you'll see Billy demanding his car back because it took a little long. That's all. But more importantly, you'll hear the people that will come in and talk about what Billy was doing to a person that evening. What he was doing, when I say to a person, I mean 3 or 4 witnesses that will tell you that on the evening of July 18th, 2010, Billy was here. Billy was doing X, Y, Z. Billy did this during the evening. You'll see pictures of Billy during that evening. It's God's grace. Because ain't nobody sitting up trying to plan an alibi because he have nothing to alibi. But you'll see where he is during the evening leading into the midnight hour where the punk that killed his girlfriend is supposed to be playing these phone games. Oh, I wasn't up there. I was in Batesville. Well, who's this number, this 662-561-3048 that you can't explain? I don't know. You called it all day. I don't know. Tell me what this message is about. Well, no, I take that back. They never did get around to asking them about the Facebook stuff, and all of the things that I read and that I have listened to, they never ask about that. They never ask him about what is the context to this. Now, what they did ask him about, and you'll get a chance to listen to, what's the context with this message? Where you're obviously supposed to be meeting her somewhere. But guess what? They don't have any of those type of messages with Billy and Shara. That's Jimmy and Shara. And guess what his answers to those are? Unless he's changed his mind. Oh, I don't know. I don't know what that is. You don't know where you're supposed to be meeting her, and you don't know where this time is. I don't know. So that's what you're going to have to jump over, these hurdles consistently in order to find Billy Ray Turner guilty. Now, while you're thinking about that, think about this, that their lead witness, who during this time, mind you, when he came in doing his telling and solving problems, that's after he's convicted. That's after Sheriff has spent $20,000 or $30,000 on him. That's after all of that. The only person who lays out a motive about any of this is little Jimmy, Edna's Jay. Because Claudia's going to come in, and you'll hear what Jay said that she was doing, and it was, I'm sorry, and yeah. She ain't testifying like that. Claudia is going to be clear. I went over there today, I heard something said, but guess what? You also will have the opportunity to hear Claudia and Shara talking both before she goes downtown and after she goes downtown. You'll hear that conversation, and then you say, is she telling the police what they want to hear or not? You get the chance to hear. What's interesting is that Billy talked for a second, and they're going to, I'm sure, have somebody who's a detective say, we asked him this, he ain't answered, and then he got tired and called. Well, guess what? All right, lawyer, I think. And I asked for, can I have the video of that? Oh, we didn't do that. 48 hours. He's talked about it. Not me. 48 hours. That's the show. 48 hours. They record everything. They record you when you walk in, you're coughing. They see what type of gun you got. The cool lady with the hair and the nails, she asks you her questions and all of that stuff, and they solve it within that hour. Not a audio recording of Billy, not a video recording of Billy, and not anything handwritten by Billy. But I'm pretty confident that they'll have a detective to try to say, well, he told me this. I'm sure that there's going to be some information about how they were supposed to have found this weapon and when that's going to come to you. And I'm sure that they're going to eventually try to say, well, there was a metal detector involved. Let's see if they bring the person whose metal detector it is, because I know what her testimony is. Now, that's not Edna's Jay. That's, in fact, Jay's Edna. Jay's Edna would be the aunt of Shara. You'll see who made the suggestion to Shara to contact Auntie Edna. You'll also have to answer these questions. Shara is 12 years older than Jay. Why would she be going to Batesville 5 and 6 times to get Jay if he wasn't really involved in this? He was just an observer trying to get information so he could blackmail Shara. That's the first question. Second question, why would anybody who supposedly committed a murder then go to Batesville to explain to Edna's Jay and brag that I committed this murder? What kind of sense does that make? Third question, why in the hell would anybody that's not stupid go to Batesville to pick up a man with the sole purpose of driving him from Collierville, that's 70 miles, to Walnut, Mississippi, that's 50 miles, and then back past Collierville, back to Batesville, and then back home, so that you can watch me throw a gun away? Third question. I shouldn't have started numbering because I can't keep up, so bear with me for a second. Next question. Why would anybody ever say in one recording that they only knew about this throwing the gun away and where it was, etc., that they can explain with pinpoint, precise accuracy, and they can forget everything else? Why would they describe objects clearly? And then the next time they talk, that's in 2012 and 2017, no, I wasn't in a car. I didn't see clippers that I described the color, the size that were used supposedly to cut down this barbed wire. I didn't see that then. But I want you all to hone in on this, please. Why would that person in 2017 describe, after having bragged and all this other stuff about throwing a gun away, finally say, I threw a gun away? Why would that person do that? I threw a gun away. Now, it wasn't the gun that I described back in 2012. It wasn't the gun that was used in this. It was 9mm. I didn't throw that one away, because that's what puts Billy in it, because Billy supposed to be, as Claudia said, he's slow. He's supposed to be so slow that he drives from Collierville to Batesville to Walnut, Mississippi, and back to Batesville. Buy that. If this story sells, I got a nice bridge. It's shaped like an M. Give me $50. It's yours. If this story sells. But you know who it sold to? It sold to the people who were having the 15 people. Good afternoon, Memphis. We solved this. We solved it. But in any of that stuff, did you ever hear about Edna's J and this contract that no matter what, we can't go after you? No matter what you say, how many times you change these facts, we can't go after you. Did you hear about Billy during that time? The fact that he wasn't, the fact that he's first in, first out, last out at church, that he opens it, closes it, cuts the heat on, cuts the lights on, that's what he does. That when people that are church members say, hey, this person's supposed to close down, that Billy is the person that you tell to do it. Not only there, but at your own home. That he's the last one to leave the engagement, because I want him to make sure that he puts the stuff up, the tables and the cake and all of this other stuff. Did they tell you that? Nah, because you know what? I don't care about the court of public opinion. I care about the court of you 12. That's it. It's 15 now, but it's going to be dwindled down to 12. I ask that you listen and that you weigh the evidence and that you give it the seriousness that it deserves. But at the end of the day, it becomes clear that they can't answer those questions answer those questions I just asked. That if they have somebody who says that Billy said something, let them do it just like everybody else. Let them play it for you in here. Let them show you where it's signed in here. Not a bunch of excuses and reasons. Well, why didn't you do that? Why didn't you say that? Ask them to show it to you just like you would any other witness. I don't care if the person has a detective badge on. Ask them to show it to you just like anybody in here would want. Also, listen to those distances because they become very important. And listen to Jimmy. And listen to how he asked him. Before I sit down, the desperation in here is so clear that I really don't know what to expect. I know that they're going to probably bring somebody who says, Billy, who's sitting over in the jail watching this, waiting on this day to get before y'all, said, man, Sheriff Glenn, I shot that nigga for her. I expect that to be said. But before you make your decision up on that, wait till you hear the rebuttal side of that. That's all I ask. I also ask that if somebody comes in here that doesn't have any connections or anything that's entrenched or rooted, and that he's all of a sudden marched in, remember the fact that who has a lot of power, a lot of investigatory power to make a lot of things move, shake, and go in the way that you want, and still weigh the evidence. In this case, it is a thinking man and a thinking lady's case. And I think that you all are the people that can think and see through it, because you can't, there's no way to sit up and say something bad about Lorenzen Wright. He's a great guy. This case, with all due respect to his family and his friends and his fraternity brothers and his close loved ones, this case ain't about him. This case is about Billy Ray Turner. And Billy Ray Turner has a name that once he got out of jail, he dedicated himself to keeping in the right way. And he helped some punk out through his niece or cousin or whatever she is to him, and he's here for it. But guess what? He put his hands in your hands. And I ask that you give that honor, the honor that you have to serve on this jury, the paramount respect that it deserves, and wait until you hear everything to make up your decisions. And I think that here, I'm going to go through a chart at the end of this about guilt. It's nowhere near beyond a reasonable doubt through the witnesses that they have. But here, it's one of these rare ring the bell situations where it becomes clear that Billy Ray Turner is innocent and this fiance killer is 100% guilty. But guess what? Y'all ain't gonna get to determine that. Neither will any other Shelby County jury.
Judge Smith. 12:45. Counsel approach, please. Ladies and gentlemen, I'm told your lunch will be here at about 12:45. Before the state calls its first witness, does anyone need a break at this time? If you do, don't hesitate to let me know. You got one taker. Remember, course instruction, cannot discuss the case amongst yourselves or with anyone else. You've heard opening statements, and what I told you is opening statements is not evidence. We'll resume in a few minutes, and we'll take one witness, and then we'll take a lunch break. You can follow Deputy Smith, please. Watch the step coming down there. Phillips, you call the court to recess, please, sir.
We'll stand in recess.